The taxi sped off before Remy's scream could catch up with it. For a second, she stood there frozen in the middle of the road, her hands still stretched as reality struck her like a rock. Daniel! Her voice tore through the streets as she ran after the moving car, her slippers slapping against the hot pavement. Inside that taxi was her entire world. 15 years of prayers, 9 months of careful hope, one fragile miracle wrapped in a blue blanket, and it was disappearing into traffic. Neighbors rushed out of their houses at the sound of her screams. Some tried to chase the car. Others held her back as she stumbled forward, nearly collapsing onto the road. "My baby!" she cried, her voice breaking into something unrecognizable. "He took my baby!" she said repeatedly as the taxi turned the corner and vanished before her eyes. Remy dropped to her knees in the dust, her hands shaking violently as her chest heaved in pain. She had waited 15 years to become a mother, and in less than 15 seconds, she had lost her child. Once upon a time, there lived a woman who misplaced her baby in the most unexpected way. Her name was Remy, and for 15 long years, she had carried one silent prayer in her heart to become a mother. Remy had visited several hospitals, seeking for a solution to her problem. The doctors all assured her that she was fine. They ran a series of tests on her and even put her on several medications to increase her chances of conceiving a child. Despite these, Remy remained childless for 15 long years. Each year came and left, like a visitor who refused to stay, and each month reminded her of the emptiness that she carried within. People whispered behind her back, calling her strong in public, but pitying her in private. Even family members stopped asking questions because silence felt kinder than disappointment. Yet Remy smiled through everything. She believed that one day her tears would turn into laughter, and that those who mocked her would one day turn around to congratulate her for her bundle of joy. Even her husband Kule assured her that his love for her was not dependent on them having children. He was so supportive of her that Remy trusted him blindly, not knowing that he already had children with another woman, twin girls who lived in town with their mother. Remy found out about the children one evening when his baby mama, Shadi, sent her a picture of them as a family. Remy could not believe her eyes as she stared at her husband in a picture with a strange woman and twin girls. The revelation hit her like thunder as she confronted her husband, who gaslighted her, revealing that all he did was for them to secure their future. Kule stood there without shame, explaining that he wanted children badly and could not continue waiting forever. He told Remy that the twins meant nothing compared to their marriage, yet his calmness felt colder than betrayal itself. Remy's world tilted in that moment. The man she had trusted blindly suddenly looked like a stranger wearing her husband's face. She cried until her chest hurt, asking why he never told her the truth. Kule avoided her eyes and insisted that she should be grateful that he still stayed with her. Those words sank deep into her chest, leaving a wound that refused to close. From that day forward, something inside Remy changed quietly. She stopped expecting too much from him, choosing instead to hold on to her faith that one day her own miracle would arrive, and just as she kept praying, her prayer was finally answered. Remy finally conceived. The news came like a whisper from heaven, soft but powerful enough to heal broken parts of her soul. She fell to her knees, thanking God with tears streaming down her cheeks. Even Kule seemed excited, though his joy felt distant, as if he was watching someone else's celebration. Remy carried the pregnancy carefully, protecting every moment like a treasure. She decorated a small corner of their room for the baby, imagining the laughter that would soon fill their home. Neighbors, who once pitied her, began to greet her with warm smiles, and relatives, who had remained silent, suddenly returned with congratulations. Remy ignored the bitterness of the past and focused only on the life that was now growing inside of her. Months passed, and the baby that she had so desperately yearned finally arrived. A handsome baby boy who she named after her late brother Daniel. Remy could not hold back her excitement. It finally felt as though the world had given her a second chance at happiness. So she grabbed it with both hands and feet. Motherhood softened her heart in a way that she did not expect. But however, it did not fix her marriage, as Kunle continued living a divided life. He bought Shade a brand new car and ensured that the twins attended expensive schools, while Remy still boarded buses under the hot sun with Daniel in her hand. She swallowed her pain quietly, reminding herself that her child deserved peace and not conflict. The months that passed was a complete struggle for them as Remy had little to care for her son. She decided to work again, not just for their survival but for her dignity. So, she began to apply for jobs and received an interview invitation shortly afterwards from a company that she had always dreamed of working. The interview was scheduled for the same morning, and Remy had no one to watch over her baby. She called her husband Kule immediately, asking him to come stay with Daniel for a few hours, but his response came sharp and dismissive. "I don't want you working," he said coldly. "A woman's place is at home, so know your place and stay there." Remy reminded him gently that his mistress Shade worked freely, but Kunle ended the call without even listening. With no other option, Remy decided to take her baby to the interview. The receptionist looked surprised to see her with a child. However, she still allowed her to sit. When the interviewer saw her determination, she smiled warmly and continued with the interview as if nothing was unusual. Remy spoke with honesty and grace, and by the end of the conversation, she got the job. Tears filled her eyes as she stepped out of the building, holding her baby in her arms. She stood under the sun for a few minutes, waiting for the bus, but no bus was forthcoming. Then a taxi pulled up in front of her as he offered to give her a lift. "Madam, the sun is too hot for the child," the man said as he offered to take her home for free. Remy was so grateful to him as she got into the taxi and directed him to her house. When they arrived at her street, she stepped out to thank the driver, and in that next second, everything changed. The engine roared as the taxi sped off, with her baby still inside. Her world collapsed in that instant as she watched her whole life flash before her eyes. With shaking hands, she called her husband Kunle, who instead of comforting her, blamed her for all that had happened. "You are careless," he shouted. "How can a mother lose her own child in such a reckless way?" His words felt heavier than the tragedy itself. He told relatives that he could no longer stay married to a woman who misplaced their only child. The man, who once promised forever, packed his clothes and left her alone in a silent house. Remy approached the police to complain, her voice trembling as she narrated everything that had happened. The officers listened carefully, writing down the details of the taxi as well as the description of the driver. They assured her that they would investigate, but their calm tone felt too slow for a mother whose heart was racing faster than time itself. That night, Remy could not sleep. She sat on the cold floor of her room, holding her baby's blanket as she took in the scent. Every sound outside made her jump, hoping it was the cry of her child returning home. But days turned into restless nights as Remy visited the police station repeatedly, refusing to sit still while her baby was still missing. She searched hospitals, orphanages, and even roadside markets, asking strangers if they had seen a taxi carrying a baby, but no one had seen him. Her husband, Kule, distanced himself from her pain. He moved between houses, spending more time with Shade and her twins, whilst leaving Remy to suffer her grief alone. He even moved out of their home later as he began to live permanently with his mistress Shade. Neighbors began to whisper again, but this time not only about the missing child, but also about how Remy's past might have finally caught up with her. Years earlier, before her marriage, Remy had once worked as a caregiver for an elderly woman whose family accused her falsely of negligence after the woman passed away. Though she was later cleared, the rumor never completely died. Now, people began to say, maybe she was always careless. That's why God refused to give her a child for over 15 years. The whispers cut deeper than any insult because Remy knew deep down that she had given her whole heart to everyone that she had ever cared for. She received a call one evening from the only son of the woman who accused her of allowing his mother to die. "Hope you now feel the pain that we felt all those years ago," he said as he hung up the call, leaving Remy in so much pain. She rushed to the police station to report the call, stating that her late boss's son Fisayo might have something to do with her missing son. The police called him in for questioning, but Fisayo insisted that he had no hand in the child's disappearance. He revealed to them that he only made the call to release the anger that he had been carrying for years. Fisayo sat across from the officers, his face tight with grief as he began to speak. My mother died in her care, he said quietly, as he revealed that he had spent every day believing that if she had acted faster, maybe his mother would still be alive. The officers asked him to explain what he meant by that, and Fisayo took a slow breath as he began to speak. His mother was getting old, and Remy was hired to help care for her. Knowing how his mother loved to stress herself with chores and things that she did not have to do herself, Fisayo visited often as he loved to spend time with his mother. So one evening, after he just left his mother's house, he received a call from Remy that his mother was rushed to the hospital. Fisayo could not believe his ears because his mother was perfectly fine a few minutes ago. So he rushed to the hospital and received the devastating news of his mother's passing. Fisayo's voice trembled as he continued to speak, his eyes filled with the kind of grief that one could not hide. When I got to the hospital, he said quietly, they told me she collapsed suddenly. Just like that. No warning, no explanation, and the only person with her at that moment was Remy. He turned to look at her briefly, not with anger this time, but with confusion that had lived in his heart for years. I blamed her, he admitted slowly, because I needed someone to blame. My mother looked fine every time I visited. She laughed, she cooked, she even danced whenever her favorite music played. How could someone who looked so strong just die? Remy lowered her eyes, remembering that night like a wound that never fully healed. What Fisayo did not know was that his mother had been sick for a very long time. Months before her death, the elderly woman had quietly shown Remy a file that she kept hidden. Hospital results that revealed a severe heart condition that had already progressed beyond treatment. She had begged Remy not to tell her son. My last days with my child will not be filled with pity, she had whispered gently. I want him to remember me laughing, not dying. Remy had struggled with the secret every day, torn between respecting the woman's wishes and the fear of what could happen. On the evening she died, nothing unusual had happened at first. The woman had eaten dinner, told stories about Fisayo's childhood, and even joked about how stubborn her son could be. Then suddenly, she clutched her chest and collapsed. Remy had called for help immediately, holding her hand and begging her to stay awake. But the older woman's breathing faded faster than anyone could stop. The doctor later told Remy privately that the rupture in her heart had been inevitable. Even if she had been in the hospital already, nothing could have saved her. But Remy kept that truth buried because she knew what the woman wished. And when Fisayo accused her, when neighbors whispered, when people looked at her like she carried death in her hands, she stayed quiet, not because she was guilty, but because she chose to protect the dignity of a woman who wanted to leave this world smiling. Now, sitting in the police station years later, Fisayo listened as the officers gently explained the medical findings that they retrieved from the hospital archives. His mother had known that she was dying, so she had chosen peace over panic. The room felt silent as that truth settled like dust after a storm. Fisayo's hands began to shake. All this time, he whispered, all this time, I hated you for something you didn't do. Remy felt tears slide quietly down her cheeks. She did not speak because some wounds were too deep for words to reach immediately. I thought you let her die, he said as tears poured down his eyes. I didn't know she was protecting me, even from the truth. He lowered his head slowly. I called you to hurt you because I believed you destroyed my family. I did not know that my mother was already preparing to leave us. Remy finally looked at him, her voice soft but steady. She loved you too much to let you feel pain while she was still alive, she said gently. She wanted your last moments with her to be beautiful. Fisayo nodded slowly as he began to regret his actions. He apologized to Remy and revealed that he had no hand in her child's disappearance. They left the station that evening as Remy wondered where her baby could be. She arrived home later that evening and met a strange envelope by her door. Remy opened the envelope cautiously and froze in complete shock. It was a flash drive, and Remy wondered what it could be. Remy stared at the flash drive for several seconds before inserting it into her laptop. Her hands were trembling so badly that she almost dropped it. The screen flickered to life. An audio file. No name, no date, just a single recording. She hesitated. Then she pressed play. At first, there was silence. Then the faint sound of movement, like chairs scraping lightly against a tiled floor. And then a woman's voice spoke. Calm, controlled, dangerously calm. He must not grow. Remy's fingers froze on the edge of the table. If that boy grows, the voice continued softly, everything changes. The inheritance will shift. Kunle will wake up. Inheritance? Remy's heart began to pound violently against her ribs. A man chuckled in the background, low and impatient. You told him the twins were his, right? And he never questioned it? The man said, as the woman replied, revealing that he was too desperate for children to look twice. Remy's breath caught in her throat. Twins? Her mind began racing. The woman sighed, a short, familiar sigh. I gave him your pregnancy because I needed access, she said. That was the only way into his life. But now that his wife has given him a son, she paused. Remy leaned closer to the laptop. If that boy leaves, everything we built will collapse. The room suddenly felt small. That laugh, that slight sharpness in her tone. Remy could feel her stomach drop as silence flooded the entire room. Remy stared at the screen, unable to breathe. It wasn't fate. It wasn't coincidence. Someone had wanted her son gone, and now she knew who. The recording ended as Remy felt her chest tighten. She could not believe that Sade had something to do with her son's disappearance. So she alerted the police, who arrested Sade and got a confession from her that Kunle was not the father of her twins and that she was only with him because of his money. She revealed how she planned with the twins' biological father to remove Daniel from the picture so that nothing would threaten the life that she had carefully built around Kunle's wealth. The room fell silent as Sade sat across from the officers, her shoulders stiff, her face still carrying the pride of someone who believed that she had already won long ago. Yes, she said slowly, her voice no longer trembling. I thought about harming that boy. I will not lie. I was afraid that once Kunle had the son, everything would change. Remy stood frozen at the corner of the station, her heart pounding painfully in her chest as she listened to all that she had to say. But I never touched him, Sade continued quickly. Before anything could happen, the child disappeared. I was even shocked myself and believed that fate had taken care of the situation for me. The officers exchanged glances. You're saying the child was already gone before you could act? Sade nodded as she revealed to them that she never got the chance to carry out her plan. Kunle sat quietly in a chair, his face pale as every lie he once believed slowly crumbled before his eyes. The officers began to search for the taxi driver again, tracing old leads that had now grown cold. That evening, news reports showed a video of a child who was discovered dead in an uncompleted building not too far away in town. Remy could not help but cry as she wondered if the child was hers. With a high rate of kidnapping in the state, Remy was trying so hard to hang on to hope that her child was still alive. She went down on her knees and prayed, pleading to God to bring her child back to her. Her husband could not face her in that moment, not after all the things that he put her through, allowing her to use the bus whilst he bought a car for a woman whose children were not even his, blaming her for losing their child, despite knowing how hurt she was by the occurrence, moving in with another woman when their child was nowhere to be found, and just when hope began to feel distant again, Remy heard the knock on her door that changed everything. It was the taxi driver, holding her baby in his arms. Remy's breath almost stopped as she grabbed her baby and began to cry. It was then that the taxi driver revealed to her that he took the baby to keep him safe. After hearing the evil plans that Sade had for the child, he revealed that he was the one who dropped the envelope on her door. He revealed that he carried Sade one evening and overheard her evil plans to kill the child. He revealed that her conversation gave him enough information that he used to trace Remy. His voice shook slightly as he continued to speak. My wife and I, we have been looking for a child for over 8 years. So when I heard Sade's evil plan towards your child, I became restless and decided to act. So I went in search of you that day and found you rushing out with the baby. I trailed you to your destination and waited for you to be done. So when you came out of that office, I offered to give you a lift for free. Remy held her son tightly against her chest, her tears soaking into his little clothes as she listened. I knew if I told you immediately, you might not believe me, he added gently, and I feared that those people watching might act faster if they realized someone had exposed them. So I carried the child away to protect him. Remy's hands trembled, but her eyes softened as she saw the sincerity in his face. My wife, she cried when she saw the baby, he continued. We have waited 8 years for a child of our own. Our house has been too quiet for far too long, but we never wanted to take what belongs to another woman. We only wanted to keep him safe until the truth came out. Behind him stood a gentle-looking woman, her eyes red from crying. She stepped forward slowly. I carried him like my own, she said softly, not to replace you, but to protect him. Every night, I prayed that you will find peace until we could bring him back to you. Remy looked at them both, overwhelmed by emotions that she could not fully describe. She stood there grateful as she thanked them for saving his life. Kunle in that moment walked in as he overheard all that had transpired. The weight of shame rested heavily on his shoulders as he realized that strangers had shown more protection to his son than he had. Kunle in that moment broke down as he began to plead for mercy. He was not pleading with her to accept him back. All he wanted was for her to forgive him because for the first time in his life, he truly understood the depth of the pain that he had caused. I abandoned you when you needed me the most, Kunle said slowly, his eyes fixed on the ground. I listened to lies, chose comfort over truth, and treated you like you were nothing when you are carrying everything alone. Remy did not respond immediately. She only held Daniel closer, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing against her chest, a sound she thought she had lost forever. Kunle wiped his tears with shaking hands. I don't deserve another chance, he continued quietly. I only want you to know that I am sorry. Not the kind of sorry that comes from fear, but the kind that comes when a man finally sees himself clearly. The room fell silent. The taxi driver and his wife stood respectfully at the side, watching the moment unfold like witnesses to a story that had traveled through darkness and finally found light. Remy took a slow breath before speaking. Forgiveness is not forgetting, she said gently, and it does not erase what happened. But I refuse to carry bitterness in my heart because bitterness is another prison. Kunle nodded slowly, accepting her words without argument. I forgive you, she added softly, but forgiveness does not mean things will ever return back to normal. Those words settled between them like truth spoken without anger. In the weeks that followed, the truth about Sade spread quickly. The lies she had built her life upon collapsed completely, and Kunle began the difficult journey of rebuilding his integrity, not for public praise, but for his own conscience. Remy focused on her new job and her son. The neighbors, who once whispered, now greeted her with admiration, seeing a woman who survived betrayal, loss, false accusation, and still chose kindness. The taxi driver and his wife became part of her life as they visited often, laughing with Daniel and bringing small gifts that carried more love than money could ever buy. Not long afterwards, the taxi driver's wife conceived and gave birth to twin babies. They believed that Daniel was the one who brought luck into their home. Remy smiled warmly the day she visited them at the hospital, watching the woman who once cried over an empty home, now holding two beautiful babies in her arms. The taxi driver stood beside his wife, his eyes shining with gratitude as he looked at Remy and Daniel. We did not save him alone, he said softly. Sometimes God allows people to cross paths so that everyone involved receives a miracle. Remy nodded quietly because she knew that if that man had not listened to his conscience that day, her story might have ended very differently. Kunle, on the other hand, learned his lessons the hard way that love cannot survive where pride, deceit, and neglect are allowed to grow. He realized too late that a woman's strength should never be mistaken for weakness, and that the child he almost lost was a mirror showing him the man that he had become. The lesson to be learned from these stories is that not every storm that enters a person's life is meant to destroy them. Sometimes it comes to expose hidden lies, reveal true intentions, and separate those who genuinely care from those who only pretend. People must learn that silence does not always mean guilt, because Remy carried accusations she never deserved, simply to honor another person's final wish. This story also teaches that desperation can make people trust blindly, but wisdom comes from paying attention to actions rather than words. Above all, it reminds us that forgiveness is not weakness, and that a kind heart should never be mistaken for foolishness, Because in the end, truth always finds its way to the surface, and those who choose integrity will eventually stand stronger than those who build their lives on deceit. I hope you enjoy.